They sacked all of the male bankers, and it's hard to tell these stories. I'm not in any way against men. That was their approach. They gave everybody their money back, made the banks pay their money back, and returned to growth long before anybody in Europe managed to do it with austerity. So I suppose I wanted to start with the point that I think that actually the revolution is always feminised. And the reason is, and again, I'm not kind of being mean to men, but they run our structures, they run our powerful institutions, they are in charge of who gets what, who does what, and where we all end up. So whenever these social structures break down, like they did with the credit crunch, or even before that, we could argue, it's always women who will be hardest hit. And we knew that as soon as this coalition formed, we knew that 75% of the cuts were going to fall on women. And I don't think it's any coincidence that the fighters in the room sitting on this sofa are also defending minorities within that minority. So my friend here is talking about black women, I'm talking about disabled women. You know, we are the hardest of the hardest hit. And as my friend here said, when you're that hard hit, when it genuinely comes down to a choice between, will I lose my home because of this? Will my children lose their school? Will I not be able to eat? Will I not be able to pay the rent? That's when you stand up and say, enough. And I think women have got a different way of doing that, and that's what's been, for me, and what I want to talk about, really interesting. Because these male structures that are dominated by men and run by men work in a very set way. And if you want to say break into politics, you need to play the game. You need to go and work for free for a while, so you need to have probably middle class parents or wealthy parents. You probably need to be male, you probably need to have studied PPE at Oxford or Cambridge. So there's this set route that you will follow to get into these structures. And I think what a lot of women did when this particular crisis hit, we had something at our disposal we hadn't had before, and that was social media. So women, again, tend to be perhaps more at home, more stuck within poverty confines, but social media opened this up this time. And when I set up my network, the Spartacus Network for Sick and Disabled People, it was really a group of about 7 women who were pretty much bedridden. And we described ourselves privately as those doughty, you know, quite well-covered women back in the 50s who would fold their arms over their, you know, hefty bosoms and have the rolling pin and say, okay, enough now. And we used to say when we were kind of planning audacious coups on Ian Duncan Smith, enough now. Well, your mum was saying, get to bed, enough. You've done enough damage, we don't want to see any more. And actually it means that women, when they decide to fight back, have to find their own way. They have to make up their own structures and they have to find their own ways into challenging. And that, I think, is where the brilliance happens and the magic happens. Because women approach problems in a different way to men, of course we do. And the line from the Icelandic Prime Minister, female Prime Minister, when she explained why they did what they did, she said, no mother will ever stand by and take a risk that means her child will starve. And that, again, I think it was an amazing thing to say. It's really, really important. So that is a different approach, and I don't want to get into, you know, how men run things and how women run things, but it's undoubtedly true. So, you know, we did all sorts of crazy things. My colleague, Kalia Franklin, stripped off on a beach in January and had a photograph taken just out of reach of her wheelchair. It was a really powerful image, and we didn't have a route into challenging this, so we made our own route, and it led to all sorts of exciting things. So, for instance, we decided that we needed to convince the House of Lords, and we were going to do that by being women and contacting them and emailing them and phoning them up and appealing to them. And it'd never been done before, can you believe that? Our second chamber had never been lobbied by ordinary people. That was something that was kept for MPs, and we just actually didn't even know that. We just assumed that if you needed something done, the best way was to talk to people and get it done. And so I want to bring Tony Benn in just to wrap up, because he encouraged me. He encouraged me all my life. He was always around in my home. We talked about him. My mum adored him. And I heard him say over and over and over again, be the change you want to see. Nothing's going to change unless you act. And when I started to act, amazing, miraculous things happen. I'm sitting here talking to you at Glastonbury. You know, I can't tell you how easy it is once you take the step. Once you take that plunge, and whatever it is that's burning in each one of your souls that you want to change, the minute you set up that website, or you go and stand on a soapbox and give a speech, or the minute you ask your friends, You don't feel like this as well, do you? Just watch what happens. Magic things happen, people rally behind you, you empower people, you give them the belief that they can change, that they can do things differently. And it's wonderful, actually, and it's much nicer, I think, than feeling that sense in your life that something's missing, you know things aren't right, you're powerless, you don't know how to change it, and so you just kind of, I think we all do it, you kind of just put your head down and you get on with work and you watch X Factor and you kind of try to pretend it's not there. So don't be those people, you know, talk to your friends, get out there, be the change you want to see, and I promise you miracles will happen.
Amazing, thank you, Sue. Brilliant as ever. I'd now like to invite Zita to perform a poem for us, and then we'll go into a more general Q&A.
This